Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for coming together to immerse ourselves in this rich body of wisdom, Torah. We're going to read through this week's Torah portion in English translation. That's Parshat Vayigash,
44.
Genesis chapter 44, beginning with verse 18. And then after we've read through that, I'll share with you a little bit of focus study about it. And then we'll have our collective conversation about it. If you'd like to join me in saying a blessing, giving thanks for this moment, feel free to do so. Baruch
atah Adonai
Eloheinu
melech haolam
asher
asher kidshanu v'mitzotav v'tzivanu
Thank you, God, for the opportunity to immerse ourselves in words, deeds, and relationships of Torah. I'll share with you the opening verses, and then I'll invite others to have an opportunity to read as well. We're in Genesis chapter 44, beginning with verse 18. Then Judah went up to him and said, "Please, my lord, let your servant appeal to my lord, and do not be impatient with your servant, you who are the equal of Pharaoh. My lord asked his servants, 'Have you a father or another brother?' We told my lord, 'We have an old father, and there is a child of his old age, the youngest. His full brother is dead, so that he alone is left of his mother, and his father dotes on him.' Then you said to your servants, 'Bring him down to me, that I may set my eyes on him.' We said to my lord, 'The boy cannot leave his father. If he were to leave him, his father would die.' But you said to your servants, 'Unless your youngest brother comes down with you, do not let me see your faces.' When we came back to your servant, my father, we reported my lord's words to him. Later our father said, 'Go back and procure some food for us.' We answered, 'We cannot go down. Only if our youngest brother is with us can we go down, for we may not show our faces to the man unless our youngest brother is with us.' Your servant, my father, said to us, 'As you know, my wife bore me 2 sons, but one is gone from me.' And I said, 'Alas, he was torn by a beast, and I have not seen him since. If you take this one from me too, and he meets with disaster, you send my white head down to Sheol. Now, if I come to your servant, my father, and the boy is not with us, since his own life is so bound up with his, when he sees that the boy is not with us, he will die. And your servants will send the white head of your servant, our father, down to Sheol in grief. Now your servant has pledged himself for the boy to my father, saying, 'If I do not bring him back to you, I shall stand guilty before my father forever. Therefore, please let your servant remain as a slave to my lord instead of the boy, and let the boy go back with his brothers.' How can I go back to my father unless the boy is with me? Let me not be witness to the woe that would overtake my father." Richard, we're at the start of chapter 45, if you want to read.
Thank you. Joseph could no longer control himself before all of his attendants, and he cried out, "Have everyone withdraw from me." For there was no one else about when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. The sobs were so loud that the Egyptians could hear, and the news reached to Pharaoh's palace. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still well?" But his brothers could not answer him, so dumbfounded were they on account of him. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come forward to me." And when they came forward, he said, "I am your brother Joseph, he whom you sold into Egypt. Now, do not be distressed or reproach yourselves because you sold me hither. It was to save life that God sent me ahead of you. It is now 2 years that there have been famine in the land, and there are still 5 years to come in which there shall be no yield from tilling. God has sent me ahead of you to ensure your survival on Earth and to save your lives in extraordinary deliverance. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh, Lord of all his household, and ruler over the whole land of Egypt.
Thanks, Richard. Let me invite Jay. Jay, would you like to read verse 9?
Verse 9. Now hurry back
Yes.
to my father and say to him, thus says your son Joseph, God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me without delay. You will dwell in the region of Goshen, where you will be near me, you and your children and your grandchildren, your flocks and herds, and all that is yours. There I will provide for you. For there are yet 5 years of famine to come, that you and your household and all that is yours may not suffer want. You can see for yourselves, and my brother Benjamin for himself, that it is indeed I who am speaking to you. And you must tell my father everything about my high station in Egypt and all that you have seen, and bring my father here with all speed. With that, he embraced his brother Benjamin around the neck and wept, and Benjamin wept on his neck. He kissed all his brothers and wept upon them. Only then were his brothers able to talk to him. The news reached Pharaoh's palace. Joseph's brothers have come. Pharaoh and his courtiers were pleased, and Pharaoh said to Joseph, say to your brothers, do as follows: load up your beasts and go at once to the land of Canaan. Take your father and your households and come to me. I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you shall live off the fat of the land. And you are bidden to add, do as follows: take from the land of Egypt wagons for your children and your wives, and bring your father here. And never mind your belongings, for the best of all the land of Egypt shall be yours.
Thank you. Jim, would you like to read verse 21?
Thank you, Rabbi. The sons of Israel did so. Joseph gave them wagons as Pharaoh had commanded, and he supplied them with provisions for the journey. To each of them, moreover, he gave a change of clothing. But to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and several changes of clothing. And to his father he sent the following: 10 he asses laden with the best things of Egypt, and 10 she asses laden with grain, bread, and provisions for his father on the journey. As he sent his brothers off on their way, he told them, do not be quarrelsome on the way. They went up from Egypt and came to their father Jacob at the land of Canaan, and they told him, Joseph is still alive. Yes, he is ruler over the whole land of Egypt. His heart went numb, for he did not believe them. But when they recounted all that Joseph had said to them, and when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to transport him, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. Enough, said Israel. My son Joseph is still alive. I must go and see him before I die.
Thank you, Jim. Catherine, we're at the very start of chapter 46, if you'd like to read a bit.
Thank you, Rabbi. So Israel set out with all that was his, and he came to Beersheba, where he offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. God called to Israel in a vision by night. Jacob, Jacob, he answered, here. And he said, I am God, the God of your father. Fear not to go down to Egypt, for I will make you there into a great nation. Myself will go down with you to Egypt, and I myself will also bring you back, and Joseph's hand shall close your eyes. So Jacob set out from Beersheba. The sons of Israel put their father Jacob and their children and their wives in the wagon that Pharaoh had sent to transport him, and they took along their livestock and the wealth that they had amassed in the land of Canaan. Thus Jacob and all his offspring with him came to Egypt. he brought with him to Egypt his sons and grandsons, his daughters and granddaughters, all his offspring. These are the names of the Israelites, Jacob and his descendants, who came to Egypt. Jacob's firstborn, Reuben, Reuben's sons, Enoch, Pala, Hezron, and Cani. Simeon's sons, Jemuel, Jamin, Ohad, Jachin, Zohar, and Saul, the son of a Canaanite woman. Levi's sons, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. Judah's sons, Onan, Shelah, Perez, and Zerah. But Er and Oman had died in the land of Canaan. And Perez's sons were Hezron and Hamul. Issachar's sons, Tola, Puva, Yob, and Shimon. Zebulah's sons, Sered, Elon, and Jalil. Those were the sons whom Leah bore to Jacob in Padan Aram, in addition to his daughter Dinah. Persons in all, male and female, 33. God's sons, Ziphion, Hagi, Shuni, Esbon, Eri, Arodi, and Areli. Asher's sons, Imnah, Ishva, Ishvi, and Beriah, and their sister Sarah, Beriah's sons, Heber and Malchiel. These were the descendants of Zilpah, whom Laban had given to his daughter Leah. These she bore to Jacob, 16 persons. The sons of Jacob's wife Rachel were Joseph and Benjamin. To Joseph were born in the land of Egypt Manasseh and Ephraim, whom Asenath, daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, bore to him. Benjamin's sons, Bela, Becher, Ashbel, Gera, Naaman, Ehi, Rosh, Mupim, Hapim, and Ard. These were the descendants of Rachel who were born to Jacob, 14 persons in all. Dan's sons, Hushim, Naphtali's sons, Jazeel, Guni, Jezer, and Shilem. These were the descendants of Bilhah, whom Laban had given to his daughter Rachel. These she bore to Jacob, 7 persons in all. All the persons belonging to Jacob who came to Egypt, his own issue, aside from the wives of Jacob's sons, all these people numbered 66. And Joseph's sons who were born to him in Egypt were 2 in number. Thus, the total of Jacob's household who came to Egypt was 70 persons.
Thank you. Mark, would you like to read? We're at verse 28.
Thank you, Rabbi. He had sent Judah ahead of him to Joseph to point the way before him to Goshen. So when they came to the region of Goshen, Joseph ordered his chariot and went to Goshen to meet his father Israel. He presented himself to him and embraced him around the neck. He wept on his neck a good while. Then Israel said to Joseph, "Now I can die, having seen for myself that you are still alive." And Joseph said to his brother and to his father's household, "I will go up and tell the news to Pharaoh and say to him, my brothers and my father's household who are in the land of Canaan have come to me. These men are shepherds. They have always been breeders of livestock, and they have brought with them their flocks and herds, and all that is theirs.
So when Pharaoh summons you and asks, what is your occupation? You shall answer, your servants have been breeders of livestock from the start until now. Both we and our fathers, so that you may stay in the region of Goshen. For all shepherds are abhorrent to the Egyptians.
Thank you, Mark. Let me invite David and Susan, if you'd like to read a little bit at the start of chapter 47.
Go ahead,
Thank you, Rabbi.
unless you want me to.
Joseph then went and told Pharaoh, saying, my father, my brothers, their flocks, their herds, and all that they own have arrived from the land of Canaan, and now they're in the region of Goshen. Out of all his brothers, he picked 5 men and presented them before Pharaoh. When Pharaoh said to his brothers, what do you do? They said to Pharaoh, your servants are shepherds, both our households and our father's households. They went on to say to Pharaoh, we have come to stay in the land because there is no pasture for your servants' flocks, for the famine is oppressive in the land of Canaan. Now we ask you to let your servants settle in the region of Goshen. Pharaoh then said to Joseph, now that your father and brothers have reached you, the land of Egypt is before you. Settle your father and brothers in the best part of the land. Let them settle in the region of Goshen. And if you know of any able men among them, make them overseers of my livestock.
And Joseph brought Jacob, his father, and stood him in front of Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Jacob, how many are the days of the years of your life? And Jacob said to Pharaoh, the days of the years of my residence are 130 years. The days of the years of my life have been few and bad, and they haven't attained the days of the years of my father's lives, and the days of their residences. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out in front of Pharaoh. And Joseph settled his father and his brothers, gave them a possession in the land of Egypt, in the best of the land, in the land of Ramses, as Pharaoh had commanded. And Joseph supported his father and his brothers and all of his father's household bread by the number of infants. And there was no bread in all the land of Egypt because the famine was very heavy. And the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan languished because of the famine. And Joseph collected all the silver that was found in the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan for the grain that they were buying. And Joseph brought the silver to Pharaoh's house. And the silver came to an end from the land of Egypt and from the land of Canaan. And all of Egypt came to Joseph, saying, give us bread. And why should we die in front of you? Because there's no more silver. And Joseph said, give your livestock, and I'll give it to you for your livestock, if there's no more silver. And they brought their livestock to Joseph. And Joseph gave them bread for the horses and for the livestock of the flocks, and for the livestock of the oxen, and for the asses. And he sustained them with bread for all their livestock in that year. And that year came to an end. And they came to him in the second year and said to him, we won't conceal from my lord that the silver has come to an end, and the cattle livestock have gone to my lord. Nothing is left in front of my lord except our body and our land. Why should we die before your eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread, and we and our land will be servants to Pharaoh. And give seeds, so we'll live and not die, and the land won't be devastated.
Thank you both so much. Mark, would you like to read again? We're at verse 20.
Thank you again. So Joseph gained possession of all the farmland of Egypt for Pharaoh, Every Egyptian having sold his field because of the famine was too much for them. Thus the land passed over to Pharaoh. He removed the population town by town from one end of Egypt's border to the other. Only the land of the priests he did not take over, for the priests had an allotment from Pharaoh, and they lived off the allotment which Pharaoh had made to them. Therefore, they did not sell their land. Then Joseph said to the people, whereas I have this day acquired you and your land for Pharaoh, here is seed for you to sow the land. And when the harvest comes, you shall give 1/5 to Pharaoh, and 4/5 shall be yours as seed for the fields, and as food for you and those in your household, and as nourishment for your children. And they said, you have saved our lives. We are grateful to my Lord, and we shall be serfs to Pharaoh. And Joseph made it into a land law in Egypt, which is still valid, that 1/5 should be Pharaoh's. Only the land of the priests did not become Pharaoh's. Thus Israel settled in the country of Egypt, in the region of Goshen. They acquired holdings in it and were fertile and increased greatly.
Thank you, everyone. That's our entire Torah portion for the week. I'd like to share with you a book of study about it. If you have a copy of the sheet, I invite you to take it out at this point. And
The old one.
just want to review a theme that at least I've been picking up on this year in studying what is happening in Exodus, at the end of Bereshit, Genesis rather. And that is this verse that is what God says to Abraham, where God says to Abraham, know well that your offspring shall be strangers in a land not theirs. And oftentimes in the past, I've read that, and I've understood that to be some kind of prediction of a dire strait that the descendants of Abraham will be in, that they'll be dislocated, and in a sense, reading that as a kind of either threat or curse or an indication of something very bad that's going to happen to the Israelites. And this year, I've been picking up on a theme that occurs in some commentaries, which is that one can read that not as a curse, but a blessing, not as a threat, but a promise. The idea being that there is something that is ultimately transformative and advancing to experience a sense of estrangement, a sense of dislocation, a sense that one is out of sorts, that one is missing something. And so this notion that this difficult and uncomfortable estrangement leads ultimately to kind of a new awareness of the capacity to grow beyond what one has been before. So tonight, when I was getting ready for our time together, that notion also made me think of this work by Thomas Kuhn, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, where Thomas Kuhn posits that sometimes we think of scientific progress as experiments and research that build upon one another and gain more knowledge and gain more data and gain greater understanding. And in his book, Thomas Kuhn suggests quite the opposite. He says that science advances not through building upon what has been, but through anomalous situations, having observations that don't fit previous theories and way of understandings of the universe. And so that those anomalous conditions lead to a dismantling of old paradigms and the construction of new paradigms. So applying that notion of Thomas Kuhn's about scientific progress and advancement, I was looking at our story here in Genesis in a similar fashion, that we really make leaps and bounds, and we come up with new ways of understanding ourselves and the world around us, not so much by building in a plodding fashion, in an uninterrupted fashion from what has come before, but through a sense of fractures and anomalies and breakings of pre-existing paradigms. And so that's the way in which I'm understanding this phrase, know well that your offspring shall be strangers in the land not theirs, is that this notion of estrangement, of dislocation, of the breaking of a sense of a coherency is what provides the opportunity to understand oneself and to make advancements in terms of oneself and one's community. So that notion comes up here when it talks about Joseph made himself strange to them. So there's a sense, I get this image of Joseph existing in this contortion of himself. And this contortion of himself initially makes it difficult for his brothers to even recognize that, well, this is their brother Joseph. He is so self-estranged that they don't recognize him. And that sense of estrangement, as we're going through this, seems to be part of a process of Joseph coming to know himself in a new way, and also contributing to the brothers having a new sense of not only Joseph, but also themselves. So this is the drama that we find ourselves in this week's Torah portion, where this self-estranged Joseph is now being approached by Judah. And it is interesting that it is Judah who approaches Joseph, whom they still don't recognize as being Joseph, only seeing him as the grand vizier of Pharaoh of Egypt. It is that really, in terms of the hierarchy of the family, it should be Reuben as the oldest son, the oldest brother, to step forward and present their case and speak to the grand vizier. But it is Judah who steps forward. And the commentaries indicate that the reason it's Judah who's capable of stepping forward at this point is because of his own estrangement that he went through in terms of his status and sense of self, because of his relationship and exchange with Tamar, where he took her as he had intimacy with her, not knowing that she was actually his widowed daughter-in-law. And she very discreetly and wisely somehow lets him know, without disclosing it to everyone else in public, lets him know who she is and what he has done. And in the course of that, he realizes how righteous she is and what he has done that was errant and wrong. And so this experience of his own fracturing of his sense of entitlement and his own sense of power and what he's capable of doing is this transformed person who's dealt with his errors, dealt with his rapacious dark side, and has come out a better person as a result of it. And so that is the energy that is now confronting this person, this grand vizier of Egypt, we know as Joseph, who is going through this period of dislocation and estrangement. And the verb that's used here that we get translated as Judah approached him is this verb which means to draw near. And so on the backside, we have this very interesting midrash that explores this notion of what it means that he drew near to Judah, that Judah drew near to Joseph. And here it is. Then Judah approached him. The design in a person's mind of deep waters, an individual of understanding can draw them out in Proverbs. The design in a person's mind are deep waters. This refers to Joseph. But as much as Joseph was wise, Judah approached and overcame him, as it is said, then Judah drew near. What does this resemble? A deep pit into which no one could climb down. Then a clever person came and brought a long rope that reached down to the water so he could draw from it. So was Joseph deep, and Judah came to draw the water. So what that this that oftentimes this notion of deep waters is used in Midrash and Talmud to describe what today we might think of as one's subconscious, one's buried thoughts, one's psyche that has been covered over by all kinds of protective self-defenses and so forth. And Judah, in this case, is described as someone who could reach down into those depths of one's soul and help that person emerge. So this is this dramatic, if you will, therapeutic process in the sense that's being described here is now commented on by the 19th century Hasidic rabbi Sfat Emet, who also commented on this verb. Vayigash elav, he drew near to him. And what the Sfat Emet is going to play with is, well, who's the him to whom Judah drew close? And it's interesting what the Sfat Emet does. He says, well, of course, obviously it means to Joseph, but it also means to Judah's own self and also to God. He made no legal plea. Yet since he accessed the reality of his narrative, salvation came to him as in truth shall spring up from the earth. So Judah engaging in this process with Joseph, of course, on the one, the surface of the narrative draws close to Joseph. But because of the work that he's doing here, the Sfat Emet is also suggesting that perhaps in this engagement of defending, of refusing to give up Benjamin, our father will die if I don't return with Benjamin. Maybe he's in that very moment, the Sfat Emet is suggesting, is reliving his failure to protect Joseph. And so he is undergoing his own self-examination. He's regurgitating that trauma that he's been carrying. And so gets closer to his own self. And in the course of doing that, draws closer to God. So here's, as we encounter this encounter between Judah and Joseph, it then says, Joseph could no longer control himself. And the verb there is lehitapek. And it's a reflexive form of the verb apek, which means to hold or be strong. So the reflexive form would be to hold oneself back. And the fact that he can't do that. He can't hold himself back. He can't restrain himself. And fascinatingly, the same verb produces a noun, a fik, which means a channel that contains water. And so there is that Joseph can no longer hold back the waters. And indeed, that's what happens. He cries, he weeps. And this weeping that is described in our Torah portion, he kissed all his brothers and wept upon them. And that verb, bachad, to weep, is not just a weep in sadness, it is a weeping that combines all these different emotions, grief and joy and even humiliation. So here we have this weeping that is this combination of an expressed grief, joy, humiliation for the way he has acted. And so this is that shattering moment between Joseph and the rest of his brothers. And that shattering moment seems to be a condition for a reconstitution of Joseph personally, of his relationship with his brothers, and ultimately a reconstitution of the entire family. And fascinatingly, immediately at the end of that verse about Joseph breaking down, of not holding back the waters, being able to hold back the waters anymore, and of experiencing grief and joy and humiliation all at once, then it says at the end of the verse, and after that, his brothers could talk to him. It is almost as if that catharsis unleashes a new form of relationship, a new form of conversation that they're all able to have. So the artwork I wanted to share with you is this painting by Georges Braque, a still life with violin and pitcher. And what's key about the Cubists is that the Cubists were reframing how to look at anything. And they were, in particular, they were overturning 500 years of Renaissance theory, art theory that had dominated for centuries. And the Renaissance approach was to pursue perfection of ideal forms. And the Cubists rejected the notion of trying to idealize and come up with the true form of any object or person. And instead, what they wanted to do was uncover as full of an object's presence as possible. And to do that, they broke images down into their geometric forms and displayed forms and individuals in their multiple planes and perspectives, all simultaneously in their artwork. And so you can see that in this painting here, which at the center is this violin, which on the one hand has the strings facing forward to us, but the neck has been twisted so that it's facing off towards the right. And then we have all this, what would we might think of would be just empty space surrounding it, also being fractured into all these facets. And so what we discovered here through the Cubists is that empty space is not mere vacancy. It's constructed of depth and dimension and edges and mass and energy. And that becomes visible to us only through their artistry of kind of disclosing to us how by fracturing out all that space and showing us all the dimensions that exist there. And so when I thought of all that fracturing, I thought of this song by Leonard Cohen in his 1992 album, Future, called Anthem, in which Leonard Cohen has this chorus, ring the bells that still can sing, forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. So Leonard Cohen is basing his song here on that Kabbalistic myth, sacred myth about during creation, light pouring into vessels and these vessels fracturing and all the light that was contained within the vessels being scattered throughout all of creation. And the Kabbalists didn't understand that as being some kind of error in the process of creation. But they understood, they saw that as being essential to the process of creation, because it allowed all this divine light then to be spread throughout all the world. And that it is the job of human beings to become aware of that. In a sense, that's what the Cubists are doing. They're making us aware that all these objects that we think of as being solid, of having just a single surface, when they're shattered, we discover, oh, there's more there than we thought. There's all this mass and energy there. And so the Kabbalistic myth is that once we become aware of that, then we can begin to gather that up together and use that in a way to make the divine ever more present in the world. So we have this notion in Kukudi, which is that there was the custom at the end of a meal to recite a blessing, Birkat Hamazon, where we give thanks for that which sustains us. And one of the blessings that's said at the end of a meal is what's called the Borei Nefashot, which is kind of an all-in kind of cover-all blessing, if you will. And it says that these words: "Blessed are you, Adonai our God, source of all existence, who creates many living souls and their deficiencies for all you create." What comes alive from the deficiencies is the soul of every life and all life. Blessed be the life of the world. So it's a curiosity. Why give thanks for humanity's deficiencies? And the notion is that because it's through our deficiencies that we create a civilization. It's not through our sense of our perfections that we create a civilization. In fact, a sense of self-sufficiency, of perfection, probably interferes with the creation of healthy civilizations. It's only those who bear witness to their own imperfections who can be the builders of civilization. And so Leonard Cohen sings out, "Ring the bells that still can ring." That's us. Forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light is. So, yes, I'd love to hear your thoughts, what you experienced, what you felt. We're reading this Torah portion. And as we do that, I want to remind us all to ring our bells. But with that, please, if you have thoughts and reactions and things you'd like to share, just raise your hand and let the call up on you. Yeah, Mark, please.
Oh, if you're this hadn't crept into my disturbed mind until you last said ring those bells, and I had to ask, jingle? Sorry.
It's all right. Well, the bell season. I thought of that. I thought, there's lots of bell ringing that goes on, and the question is the bell ringing designed to call us forward? Is it a call of celebration, of triumph? So and the notion from Leonard Cohen that, well, we're the bells. We need to ring ourselves. And of course, I also thought of the Liberty Bell in the United States, which is a cracked bell. And that got me to thinking about, which I wrote about it in the written commentary, about our U.S. Constitution, which starts off in order to form a more perfect union. And wasn't that how insightful? It doesn't say in order to form a perfect union, in order to form a more perfect union. The notion and understanding being that this is going to go on. We're never going to reach perfect. We're just going to try to keep improving it. And the way we keep improving it is by constantly being aware of, if you will, what's estranged, what's missing, what's absent, and to try and repair, if you will, the absences, or be aware of the absences and build those in. Go ahead, Catherine, and Richard has something you'd like to share. Go ahead, Catherine.
Okay. Just two thoughts. When I first read this parshat, I thought, well, Joseph has succeeded in not only revealing himself, but in fact in bringing his family together, uh, because uh, because of withholding, right? He has to withhold up until this point. And I was thinking, well, why doesn't he just go back to Jacob? Why doesn't he just join his brothers and go back? Um, but then we realize that he still needs to relieve people of their famine. I mean, that he can't, that there's this larger good that he needs to perform. And I just found that really important to sort of keep in mind.
Yeah, that's a really, I'm fascinated by what you said. It's not as if Joseph said, oh, wait, a minute. I'm not an Egyptian. My name is, even though I was given this name, Zephanath Paneah by Pharaoh, that's not who I am. I'm Joseph. What the heck am I doing here? Yeah, let's pack up everything and go back to the land of Canaan and let's go see Dad. That somehow he now is, if you will, navigating two worlds. He's become more complex
Yeah.
than before. Yeah, so
Yeah. And the other thing has to do with the painting and Leonard Cohen's verse, there's a crack in everything. And if you look at the painting, um, there is indeed a crack in everything. Um, but also, I think it's really interesting that the color makes it much more complex, that it's really monotone, and therefore it makes it even more difficult to discern the violin in the picture. And so, in a sense, um, he is asking us to exercise the power of looking, right? Of really observing. And that if we don't observe, we really won't get much from this painting at all.
I love that. And there's when Leonard Cohen gave a interview years later after having written another song that was on the album, the same album as Anthem, a song called Democracy, which also talks about cracks. Democracy is coming through a crack in the wall. Um, he had some verses in that song that were kind of more directly and pointedly political, and then he took those verses out when he recorded it because he said, I really didn't want to start a fight with the song. What I really wanted was a revelation in the heart. And so the notion that one can develop, create a revelation in the heart, not by being too direct and being too blatant and too explanatory, but as you say, to create verses that get people to wonder and to explore, and that exploration, as is happening in our Torah portion, that exploration is
Put my hand down.
revelation of the heart. Because if Judah had just walked and said,
Why?
here's the situation. We know you're and we treated you bad, and now you're treating us bad, and
Because
no, it has to be something that in
I thought I had raised it by flashing my hand.
to do some exploring
I raised it.
into the painting and what Joseph was doing in River. We call upon Richard here. Yeah.
Yes, wow, Benjamin. And where does Benjamin wind up? He winds up on Judah's shoulder. Right. That's such an important part of our story. Reminds me of the end of maybe that's another story. And then the bell, ring the bell, that's still coming on. To get your perfect offering. Get what you have already in there. Make yourself ring. Dig into the hole from which you were dug. You'll find you're here for something, and do that. That's your job. Not to make the perfect offering to get something back for your evil, or to be who you are. That's what we need to have you do.
Yeah. Thank you, Richard. And I see David, Susan, you've got your hands up. Go ahead.
I was struck this time with the fact that Pharaoh is being very generous. He's generous in the way he's teaching treating Joseph. Of course, that's because Joseph interpreted things for him so they could move forward. But he also is giving Joseph's family the best land, he says. And it just occurred to me how gracious the Torah is in setting that up so that we have a Pharaoh that is positive, who is not the Pharaoh that causes all later where we experience all of the plagues, so that there's a balance, and it's not just, oh, those people are awful. It's that person was.
That's nice. So we have these, yes, we have these contrasting pharaohs, with one pharaoh who is welcoming of the stranger, who has elevated to the highest position possible in this empire, a non-Egyptian who brings in all these other non-Egyptians, and as you said, gives them this opportunity to spread out, to maximize wealth, and to be prosperous and so forth. And then pretty soon we're going to meet another pharaoh, and that other pharaoh is someone who's fearful, who is concerned primarily with his own status, who's concerned that out of fear. And so, and we'll see that ends up disastrously for that pharaoh. So rich in messages there. So thank you, Susan. Richard, do you want to follow up?
So just because it mentions in here, they got holdings. And elsewhere, I can't name it down, I've been told, and what, that big mistake. You should never have got holding. You're setting up to hold taxes to become slave. It's not a happy joke.
Those,
One of the silence.
that is right. Yeah. Okay, and any other thoughts, comments? So this season of light beginning to break through as we hit the winter solstice, light beginning to break through, and the notion that nature is saying something to us that sometimes we forget, which is it is possible, not only is it possible, but there is an insistence towards life, the return of life. And so, in a sense, when we light our candles, we are enacting that natural drive of creation, which is to keep seeking out life. Life will find a way. Sometimes it's through the merest of cracks that water will begin to seep through. I got you there, David, right? And seep light, water will find a pathway. And here we are with the notion that we try and you dramatize that by the lighting of increasing candles. And what you've all been sharing is, I think, revealing this kind of underlying theme that is throughout Torah and throughout the Jewish Bible, which is that we are constantly resisting the tyranny of perfection. And that it is not perfection that we seek, it is improvement that we seek. And the fact that the first primary story involving human beings in the Bible, the story of the Garden of Eden, one way to read that is to read it that as an explanation that a place of perfection is an inhospitable environment for human beings. And our primary heroes and protagonists in throughout Torah are not perfect human beings. They are flawed, Jacob is kind of the archetype of that. He improves himself, and then he plummets again to low levels of moral behavior, and then he rises himself up again, drops again. And well, Larry Collins' kind of, if you will, affirmation of our capacity to be that in our flawlessness, it's our flawedness that enables us to be builders of a better world. And so we're going to ring our bells. And I'm in a community of bell ringers. And I'm so grateful because we give one another that permission to be not perfect, but to acknowledge our flaws and realize that's what's going to build a better world. Our awareness of our flaws rather than an insistence on the perfection. God bless you all. I look forward to our next gathering. Be well. God bless you all. Thank you so much for joining together. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.